Hey guys, how's it going? This is the Power Gunner, and welcome to Infamous Second Age Power Ideas number 665. I got some complaints on the last video that there wasn't even a power idea, but what can I say? It's not like it was my fault. This time, I'm going to go to my YouTube comments to find a real power idea. Okay, here's one from Michael Stefano. He says, "Christmas came early, yeah, whoa, bless you, dude. Someone still remembers Infamous." That's right, someone still does remember Infamous, unlike some people. Thank you for real, I'm really glad. Now please consider talking about a calcium/boner power. Here's the breakdown. Where's the breakdown? Alright guys, here's my idea for the calcium/boner power. Dixon drains this power by drinking loads of milk to build up his calcium levels. And when the meter is full, Dixon can unleash his massive, raging boner upon his enemies, annihilating them with the sheer size of his shaft. Hello, I am back. We have, and by that I mean I have, and you didn't help me whatsoever, I have built the Upside Down. So you're probably thinking, Zach, you built way too much camera. No, I'm just kidding, you don't care. But yeah, basically I'm just gonna build the last part, which is all these pieces here that you mostly can't see because this is in the way. But yeah, all these pieces, they're gonna turn into trees that end up being stands for these, so they can be attached and be flipped and stuff. So yeah, this is the Upside Down. We have Will, there we go, Will Byers there. He's a scared little child. Then this is the Demogorgon, which you cannot see well, and I'll have to do close-ups of. And then this is an 11, aka Elle, aka Jane. She has her disguise from Season 1 on, and she's holding an Eggo waffle, which is somewhat irritating, but I'll let it pass, I guess. One thing that I do really like in Season 3 is they had less obsession over Eggos, which in Season 2 they just took it way too far. They're just constantly referencing that Elle likes Eggos, and I mean, I think it was a brand deal or something, I'm pretty sure. Product placement. Alright, so Nancy, Jonathan, Will, Mike, 11, Lucas, and Max are all now teamed up together to figure out what's going on with the Flayed and the Mind Flayer, and pretty much everyone who was having relationship troubles before, like, it all gets very quickly fixed. In a way that's sort of irritating to me. Like, I get that once they're forced to work together, they sort of automatically end up resolving their issues, but it just seemed rather quick to me, and like, it was just sort of brushed over. Now, I understand that with Max and Lucas, I don't think Max breaking up with Lucas was like completely serious in the first place, but Nancy and Jonathan were starting to have like a little bit of serious issues, but then in an elevator they just both say that they're sorry to each other, and then that's the end of that and they're fine. Thankfully, Mike and 11 get a little bit more development throughout the rest of the season with their relationship. So everyone goes to the hospital to visit their grandma, who's not actually their grandma.
This is my family.
Extended.
And they quickly realize that grandma isn't there anymore, and that... God damn it, I dropped my brick separator tool. And now I got cobwebs on me again! So Nancy and Jonathan's bosses, or former bosses from the newspaper, are there. They've both been flayed, and they're both quite creepy versions of their former selves, because they're not themselves, but they kinda still are. But Nancy and Jonathan fight them while the younger kids don't really know what's going on downstairs, and it's yet again another great fight scene, which Stranger Things isn't necessarily known for, but this is just a great tense scene where people throw each other and they hit each other violently and they stab each other, and it's pretty great. I really like how the Flayed feel pain at the same time, which if you think about it, means that an army of Flayed could never work out for the Mind Flayer, because if you hit one of them, all of them would feel the pain and be stunned. So it would actually work as a huge disadvantage to the Flayed if his plan was to have an army of Flayed, which it isn't, because, you know, they melt and turn into his body. Which is what happens after Nancy and Jonathan kill their newspaper bosses. Hannah, you're being too loud, I'm making a video! I'm not live streaming.
Oh, what are you doing?
I'm making a video.
Oh.
Get out! Okay guys, sorry for the rude interruption by my sister. But what I was talking about is the newspaper bosses, once they are killed by Nancy and Jonathan, they melt, and it's disgusting and amazing and awesome and gross, and I love it. And they mesh together and turn into a monster, which is such a great, creepy reveal moment. And then 11 finally realizes something bad is going on upstairs, and she saves them. Something that's always been great about Elle is her need to protect her friends no matter what, and even, you know, self-sacrificing herself when needed. And that starts showing up here, and a little bit earlier, I guess, with like the sauna test. But throughout the entire rest of the season, she really goes for it and doesn't care if she's hurting herself to save her friends, which is just a great characteristic that makes her a likable person and a good friend. Alright, we are going to start... Uh-oh, did I break it? We are going to start conjoining the worlds. Look at that. Mike obviously cares for Elle, so he doesn't want her to be risking her own well-being to save them, but he sort of has to realize that he needs to step back and give her her space and let her do what she needs to do, you know? Which is good character relationship development, I think. So Elle tries to see where the Flayed are, and she finds Billy using her, you know, her mental finding power thing, or whatever it's called. And she gets a flashback look into Billy's past, which is quite interesting. I think it adds more to his character knowing more of where he came from, and that his dad was not only violent towards him, as we knew in Season 2, but violent towards his mother and just yelling and both verbally and physically abusive to Billy and his mother. And Billy really loved his mother, so that really affected Billy and led him to make choices that ended up making him a bully, just like his father was to him, and that's a very realistic thing that happens in the world, which is very sad to say. And I think Elle is sort of shocked by this because she never knew Billy as anything more than a weird, dickish man, teenager, something. Anyways, Billy, under the Mind Flayer's control, tells her that they've built everything for her and they're coming for her to like kill her and her friends and end the world and stuff. And there's some really great built-up tension, and it first climaxes in the scene where the Mind Flayer's body attacks the cabin, Hopper's cabin, where all of the kids are. So we get another action horror scene, which is pretty good. It's a little bit weird at the same time, I guess, but, you know, there's good spooky tension throughout it, and I like that the show doesn't have action just for the sake of action. It's always a result of what's happening in the story and, you know, the plot and all that. Something that I've noticed this season has is a big case of what I would call epic breaking the law, which I guess is when good guy characters who aren't, like, necessarily evil in any way break the law for good reasons, and they do it really epically. You got Hopper kidnapping people, beating up the mayor, you got Joyce beating up the mayor, you got the kids breaking into a convenience store. A lot of epic breaking the law in this. So Elle was like bitten by the Mind Flayer, and there's a weird little gross piece of it inside of her leg. And when this happened, I thought it meant that Elle was going to become flayed by the Mind Flayer, and the Mind Flayer was going to be able to use her powers against everyone, which would have been pretty crazy and awesome and epic, but at the same time, I get why they didn't do it, because if that had been the case, then the other characters probably wouldn't have had a reasonable way of winning, and they probably would have just all died. So from a writing perspective, you have to be realistic unless you want all your characters to die, so I get why they didn't do that, but it would have been interesting. Okay, these instructions are like kind of hard to see, so gotta get the old flashlight out here. So while everyone's trying to help Elle with her bite, Mike is trying to talk to her and fix their relationship issues a little bit more. And overall, I think the rest of that stuff in this season is cute and realistically written, and it's good. I like it. And then Dustin ends up being able to finally contact the other kids, So he lets them know that they're in the mall. So all the other kids go to the mall to rescue Dustin and Steve and Robin and Erica. So now all of those characters are together, and Elle's bite is getting worse and hurting her more. So there's a very gory, disgusting scene where Jonathan tries to get it out of her, and then she gets it out, with her force powers, her telekinesis. And then after that, she can't use her powers anymore, which I think makes for an interesting finale episode because Elle can't do the thing that she's good at, so she has to just be like a normal character and find other ways to work through her conflicts.
Where are my pieces? Where are my Lego pieces?
Seriously, I can't find these stupid pieces. Anyways, and then Hopper and Joyce arrive at the mall because they intercept a Russian transmission because they have one of the Russians' radios that Hopper got when he murdered one of them or knocked them out or something. So all of the characters are now, for the first time in the season, together, and they fill each other in on what's been going on and everything that they've figured out throughout the season, which I think is a good way to start off the final episode. And then in that episode, everyone once again splits up and goes off and does their own things, which is sort of cool for the final episode to have a mini version of what was going on throughout the whole season with all the groups splitting up and working on things separately. Except for now, they're working on them separately, but also together. Hopper and Joyce both show once again that they are the protective parent types, with Joyce getting overly worried about Will just because, Will's been the center of these things in the past, even though now he's not, and all he can do is sense the mind flare and do nothing and be completely useless other than that. And Hopper won't let any of the kids go down to the Russian base with them because they're children. So Dustin and Steve and Robin and Erica, same group as we had before, the ice cream group, they go to Cerebro, which I think is really cool that was set up in the first episode and then doesn't really do anything until the final episode. So they go to Cerebro so that they can talk to Hopper and Joyce and Murray while they are in the Russian base because it's hard to get signals down there, so they need a good radio tower. Also, when Hopper talks to Mike again, he's finally not a dick to him, which is pretty cool. He sort of realized that he was a dick to him before. I think that all of his bickering with Joyce has made him a little emotionally softer towards that situation. So Nancy and Jonathan and Will and Mike and Eleven and Max and Lucas try to leave and go to Murray's place, like as a safe house basically, but Billy Boy stops them and they're stuck in the mall. So we have pretty much the same teams of characters working together still, and I think it might have been interesting to mix things up in this last episode and switch around who's working with who, but those characters do all work well together, so I understand why they keep them as groups. I'm just saying maybe if they mixed it up a little bit more, it might have added some more spice to the season, So Steve and Robin end up going back to the mall to rescue all the kids who are in the mall. And meanwhile, there is my favorite scene in season 8. And by that, I mean my least favorite scene it's episode 8 of season 3. Gosh, I'm sorry. Alright, so my least favorite scene of season 3. Hopper, Joyce, and Murray need to know Planck's constant because it's a password to the safe to get the keys, and they had learned that information from Alexei. But Murray didn't remember Planck's constant correctly. So, Dustin ends up calling Susie, his girlfriend that we didn't know if she was real before, on Cerebro to ask for Planck's constant, but Susie makes him sing Neverending Story with her first, and
Reach the stars, fly a fantasy.
Tonally, this does not work. We have the climactic episode in a mystery horror show where we have some characters sneaking down into an evil Russian base and shooting people to death, and other characters are being attacked by a giant body made out of human bodies. But meanwhile, we get these two children singing a pop song together, and it's obviously meant to be comedic, but that does not work right now. It ruins the tone of the scene, and it just went way too far.
Enough.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
I would say it's really the only moment of comedy that went too far, although as a whole I think the comedy is a little bit maybe too much in this season. So we might as well get into this topic now. I was going to talk about it a little bit later, but let's just do some comparisons of Season 1 and Season 3, just focusing on the tone. Here's some scenes, and you will notice the differences.
Are you alive?
Put that thing away, stop behaving like a jackass, and ask him what he's doing that's making my magnets fall off my damn fridge!
You can find a nice quiet place to park and...
Steve, I have to study. I'm not kidding.
Well, why do you think I want it to be nice and quiet?
Jesus, slow down, man.
What is this, like the Indy 500?
It's the Indy 300.
No, dingus, it's 500.
It's 300.
Let's say a million. You're supposed to hit the cans, right?
Oh, actually, you see the spaces in between the cans? I'm aiming for those.
Bald Eagle, I repeat, this is Scoop Troop. Do you copy?
Yes, I copy.
Call sign?
Bald Eagle.
Please repeat.
Bald Eagle. This is Bald Eagle.
Copy that. Good to hear your voice, Bald Eagle. What's your 20?
So obviously Season 1 is a lot more grim and realistic, I would say.
Your daughter, what grade is she? Maybe I'll get her in my class.
No, she lives with her mom in the city. Thanks for coming out, Tish. We really appreciate it.
She died a few years back.
Sorry?
His kid.
Season 3 is much more over the top and humorous and colorful with the cinematography, and many things are just so exaggerated.
That's why you should listen to Alexi.
All right, yeah. Your new boyfriend, right?
Yes, every man I talk to from now on has to be my
Yeah,
boyfriend.
he does. He reminds me a little bit of a Russian Scott Clark.
Oh, here we go.
And it sort of feels like Season 3 is trying too hard to just be like non-stop entertainment beamed into your brain. Like everything's very fast moving. Everything is shush for a moment. I'm trying to explain my point. No, everything is very entertaining, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just a little out of control. And I think Season 1 succeeds more than Season 3 partially because its tone is a little bit more consistent and it really draws you into the story of like this missing boy and this dark mystery going on. So yeah, I just had to bitch about that. So Steve and Robin end up saving Nancy and Jonathan, and then Steve, Robin, Nancy, Jonathan, Lucas, and Will distract the Mind Flayer by driving away, and then it chases them. And then later they come back and throw fireworks at it, which is like one of the only cool things that Lucas does all season. So Mike, 11, and Max are running from the Mind Flayer in the mall. They get split up from the rest of the group, and Billy is chasing them, and he gets 11. And I really love how 11 can't use her powers in this scene to fight him, so she reminds him of his past and his mother, which is what brings him out of the trance he's in, out of the mind control. Not entirely, because I'm sure the Mind Flayer is still there, but Billy's able to fight back and save Elle and the rest of the kids from the Mind Flayer and sacrifice himself in the process, which is very sad and emotional, and I'm really glad that Billy had some sort of redemption at the end. It's like he's just fighting back against all of the evil that has tortured him throughout his life and abused him, and he's, for once in this show, doing something for the benefit of others. And I think it's a really great sort of arc, even though at the same time there almost isn't an arc, because there is no gradual place to getting there, really. It's more of just Billy is possessed, and then this thing brings him out of it, and he has his moment of redemption. But still, I love what they did with his character in this season, turning him into a villain, basically, but giving him that much-needed redemption at the end. So I really like that they edit together the two climactic fight scenes, both with Billy and 11 and the Mind Flayer, and the one with Hopper and Russian Arnold Schwarzenegger, which we need to do a little bit of backtracking on Hopper and Joyce and Murray. So Hopper doesn't want to put another person at risk by taking Murray down to the base with them, But Murray knows Russian, so he has a good point on why he needs to be there too. Also, he thought that he knew Planck's constant, which, I mean, he could have just written down, I guess. Maybe he did, I don't remember. So Hopper and Joyce have a good old chat, and Joyce has decided that she may just stay in Hawkins and be a detective for the police station. Also, she asks Hopper out on a date, which, you know, reverses the roles of who was asking who out. And it really shows that Joyce has come around to realizing that she can have a family in Hawkins still, and it's already there for her. And her sort of new family that she's found are the people that she faces these traumatic issues with and that help her through them, and that is what she needs. So Russian Arnold Schwarzenegger comes down into the base following them, and something that I ended up really noticing is I think that that character basically represents Hopper's anger towards not being able to have control over things in his life. Because it's like he's always following Hopper. Wherever Hopper goes, he can't get rid of him. He seemingly can't beat him in a fight. He just keeps on pursuing Hopper until the end, when Hopper finally just decides to let go of his desire to have control over these things in his life. And he accepts that he's going to need to sacrifice himself to save the day. And it's in that moment, or rather right before that moment, that he finally does beat Russian Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I think that's sort of a clever way to symbolize Hopper's character and what he's going through and how he struggles with his anger and ultimately defeats it. So yes, Hopper ends up dying, which is pretty shocking. Billy's death, not so much, but Hopper's, I didn't see coming at all. Joyce had to close the gate while Hopper was still in the death zone, I guess we shall say. And also for Joyce, that's something that like she would never want to do, is kill Hopper. But she had to do it not on purpose so that she could ultimately save other people that she cares about. Which is the thing about Joyce, is she's always going to do what she needs to do to save her kids. So it's very sad for multiple reasons, because Joyce finally decided that she wants to settle down in Hawkins, maybe go on a date with this guy. Plus, he's Eleven's father now, and for the longest time she didn't have a proper, real dad. So it just kind of comes out of nowhere and hits you in the feels. Now, of course, there is much speculation that Hopper isn't actually dead. Something interesting that I found when I watched it again this time is that right before the key thing like blows up, he's not standing where he was just standing. Like, he's not there, so I don't know. Like, I don't see any possible way that he could have avoided his doom, but he's not there, so maybe that means something. Like, we never see him die. Anyways, I'm just hoping that in Stranger Things 4, they bring Cole McGrath back. Alright, so all of the tension is sort of released at once, and then there's a really great soundtrack piece playing in the background that's just slow and ambient and sad, and most of the sound is cut out from the scene following Hopper's death, which I think works really well. It's really sad when you see Eleven realize that Hopper's gone. Gone? And then we cut to an epilogue that takes place, I think, 3 months after the rest of the season. So the mayor is actually arrested, which is nice little closure to that minor character, I guess. Steve and Robin get new jobs, and I think it's quite funny how Robin convinces the guy, I don't know his name, but that dude who's also in a series of unfortunate events. And he's a really funny actor with how monotone he is. I love that guy, whatever his name is. Anyways, she's talking to that guy, and she convinces him to hire Steve, because Steve will bring the ladies around the shop. Which is funny because that's also why she would want Steve around. I mean, other than them being friends. Really, again, is because she wants some of those ladies too, you know? Anyways, I thought that was funny. So, seemingly the Byers have adopted 11, which makes sense. And they have decided to move out after all, since, you know, Hopper's kinda dead, and I think for Joyce, there's just too much trauma in Hawkins. So I totally get that she would move out. And it's really sad. That's something that happens in life as people grow up. like some of your friends move out of town, or maybe you're the person who moves out. And you have to say goodbye to being around them. Not necessarily goodbye to the friendship, but when things are long distance, they're just a lot less there. And even if you try to keep the friendship going, it won't be the same. And it's not just friendships, there's relationships as well, because Elle and Mike were dating, and so were Nancy and Jonathan. They're being involuntarily broken up by this, basically. Will gets a bit of closure with what was going on in the first half of the season. We see that he gives up Dungeons and Dragons, so he's sort of moving on in life and growing up from that. And on the other hand, we see Erica accepting her nerdius and getting into Dungeons and Dragons. And we also see that Elle's powers still don't work after 3 months. They don't work whatsoever. Honestly, I think this would have not been a bad ending for the show. They're going to make more seasons. Well, at least one more season. I've heard that the Duffer brothers planned to do either 4 or 5 seasons, so I'm not quite sure yet. But I certainly hope this show doesn't go on forever, because I think we've seen a diminishing quality in the show already. Not too much, but just enough to where you can see that if they kept on making this show for, let's just say, anywhere more than 5 seasons, I think the quality of the show would significantly dip by then. So I hope that they end it soon. But like, this would have been a decent ending to the show. The Byers move out, and everyone, you know, sort of is in this stage of moving on with their lives. Hopper's dead, and Elle ends up reading the speech that he wrote for her and Mike that he never told them, which is super sad and really heartfelt and great. I may or may not have shed a tear in that scene, which means that I didn't, because I'm a man and I don't cry. Hopper's speech brings resolution to his arc in the season and his death, and I think it's really sweet how he went off script from Joyce's advice on what she said he should say, which was good advice, but it ultimately just wasn't personal enough. So Hopper just honestly writes about his feelings, which is great to see that character do when he didn't for a majority of this season. And he talks about not putting yourself in a cave where you are blocked off to emotions, but just being out there in the world and expressing yourself and not being afraid of getting hurt, because it's going to happen. And I think this season has a really well done theme of people growing up and changing in life, moving on from things that have happened in their past, friendships and relationships changing, and sort of just the sadness that automatically happens in life with the passage of time, I would say. And that sounds maybe a little too deep for Stranger Things Season 3. But it wraps up the show, or rather the season, in a way that I think is emotionally satisfying. But then, of course, there's a mid-credits scene that is in Russia, and they show a Russian prisoner being sacrificed to a Demogorgon, it seems. Although the Russians say no, not the American. So they have an American prisoner, and it's debatable whether that's Hopper or not. So that American prisoner could be Hopper, for sure. Maybe he was sent through the gate into the Upside Down, and then the Russians found him and brought him through a gate that they've opened in Russia? That's possible. In fact, that's the only possible way that I could see Hopper living. And if it is, in fact, some other way, then I think it's pretty much bullshit. But it also may be Dr. Brenner, aka Papa. Speaking of which, let's talk about the fact that Season 3 didn't bring us any resolution to one of the things set up in Season 2 in the episode called The Lost Sister. In fact, we didn't get any references or resolution to that episode at all, and maybe they're just saving that for later seasons, which would be fine, but if they don't, I think they're going to make that episode feel even more disjointed than it already sort of felt. I get that most fans didn't like that episode. I actually didn't think it was that bad. I think it was necessary character development for 11 in Season 2, but a lot of fans didn't like the episode because it just doesn't fit in with the other ones. It's in a different location, it has different characters, tonally it's a little different, so I definitely don't think it fits in Season 2 all that great, but I don't think it's a bad episode. Anyways, by the time that this show ends, I would like some resolution to both Kali and whether or not there were other test subjects that are out there, because that's heavily hinted at, as well as what's going on with Dr. Brenner, because that one dude that they went to kill in that episode said that he was alive, and then Elle got a vision of him that was made by Kali to make Elle want to stay with them. But nevertheless, she got a vision of him that definitely made it seem like he's still alive and out there, just based on the way that it was done. So I think it would make a lot more sense if the American prisoner was Brenner. That way they could tie him into the show again. I have no clue what's going on with him. All we know is he was jumped on by the Demogorgon at the end of season 1 and assumedly killed, but apparently it seems like he wasn't. So I think if they're going to tie up that loose end, then the American prisoner should be Dr. Brenner, not Hopper. And unfortunately, I think that would just mean that Hopper is dead. Well, it's not necessarily unfortunate. Like, it's unfortunate because we care about the character. We like the character. We don't want him to die, right? But his death was meaningful, and it had closure with his letter, and it was very emotional, and I think it might take away from the death to have him come back. That being said, I think the makers of the show are gonna make him come back anyways, because that's what people want, and I feel like Stranger Things is veering in the direction of crowd-pleasing. Well, it sort of has been for a while. And a little bit less in the direction of just wanting to tell a cohesive, good story. Which is sad. And something that irritates me in season 3, although I didn't quite notice all of it until watching it for a third time, is that a lot of the characters are underused, or the character is just there, but there's nothing going on with them as a character. They're just sort of there to serve the plot. For example, Jonathan. Jonathan is still there after his character has things going on with his job, but other than beating up some flayed people and trying to help Elle with her bite and a few other plot things, he doesn't do anything as a character or have any further development. Also, I feel like a lot of the character development is in the first half of the season, and at least half of the characters don't have anything going on with them in the second half. I think it would overall make for a more cohesive story if character development and plot development with the mystery monster stuff was happening at the same time. Lucas is another character that barely has anything going on with him in the whole season. Basically, Max breaks up with him and then he tries to help Mike get 11 back, and that's the only character things that happen to him. Yes, he figures out that they can use fireworks, but that's not necessarily a character thing. Like, I guess it's cool because it's something that only he would have thought of, but it doesn't really add much to his character that wasn't there before, and it doesn't do new interesting things with his character. So in the second half of the season, here's a list of characters who basically have no development whatsoever. Nancy, Jonathan, Will, Max, and Lucas. And that being said, I feel like Dustin has very little character development, although there is a little bit there with him becoming more responsible and caring for the older kids. Also, Murray doesn't have any, but like I said before, I think that's okay when it comes to his character. And then the characters that actually do have development in the second half of the season are Steve, Robin, Erica, Joyce, Hopper, Alexi, Mike, and 11, and sort of Billy too. Although not all of those characters have that much development, Mike is just trying to fix his relationship with Elle, and Elle is basically just doing the same thing with Mike, and Elle is sort of realizing that her issues with Mike weren't all that bad after all, and she sort of connects with Billy. Erica sort of just accepts that she's a nerd, I guess. So really the only characters who have any sort of major development in the second half of the season are Steve, Robin, Joyce, Hopper, and Billy. Which is pretty sad for a show that has that many characters, and you would think that as the show ramps up for the climax, more and more characters should be finishing their arcs for the season, but a lot of them don't. Either they finish it earlier on, or they have very little going on in the first place. Max is also a character that I should mention as not having too much to do other than early in the season when she connects with 11. Yes, she has her connection to Billy, but as a character, she doesn't change or develop much after the first 3 episodes. And then you can compare this to season 1, where throughout the season, all of the major characters had something going on with them that was interesting, and they all had a reason to be there. And yes, season 3 has more characters than season 1 did, which makes everything a lot harder to balance. But I think the creators could have found a solution to that, either having fewer characters involved with what was going on, or putting on their thinking caps and being really good writers and figuring out something interesting for every character to have happening to them. Also, something that I noticed is that in this season, pretty much every character is either likable and or funny. And I think it makes for more interesting characters when some of them aren't completely likable. For example, in Season 1, Jonathan was a massive creep. Steve was an asshole. And so was Lucas. And then in Season 2, Billy was an asshole, while he wasn't mind-controlled. And yes, we do have Mayor Klein and Russian Arnold Schwarzenegger as our sort of human villain characters, but they're both very minor side characters. Season 1 is the best season because it has the most mystery because you know nothing about what's going on at the start of it, and every character has something meaningful to do. None of them are just there because they have to be. It is a contained story that is resolved, with the cliffhanger simply leaving a creepy vibe after everything seems safe. Really, Season 1 didn't need any sequel seasons. But now that I'm almost at the end of this review, I don't want to paint Season 2 and 3 in too much of a bad light because I do like them overall. I did watch both seasons 3 times, so obviously I really like them. And some of the flaws that I'm mentioning did take repeated viewings to even notice. Wow, look at that, guys. I just built these trees in a split second. That was amazing. I have Lego building skills. Okay, so let's talk about a few more things that I may want to see in Season 4 and or just, you know, speculate about it. So Netflix has uploaded a teaser for Season 4, and in it, it says we're not in Hawkins anymore. You know, sort of a play on the Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore, Wizard of Oz thing. So hopefully that means that we're not in Hawkins anymore. I mean, that's what it says. Because I genuinely think it would be cool to have the next season be mixed up a little by having it not take place in Hawkins. It could give us something new and have less characters. And if they have fewer characters in the show, they can focus more on the ones that they do have. So maybe that means it would take place in Maine, where Joyce said she wanted to move to earlier in the season. That's where I'm assuming they are moving to. And then the characters would be Joyce, Eleven, Will, and Jonathan. Plus, I'm sure there's going to be more than just that. But, you know, they can really focus on those characters. Or maybe it means it's all in the Upside Down, which wouldn't make any sense, so yeah, that's not gonna happen. Or maybe a large portion of it is in Russia. I think it would be really cool in Season 4 to maybe have all of the main characters from the show reunited at the end of the season, but for most of the season to not involve a lot of them. I think that would be really cool, and it would mix up the show and give it something new, but at the same time, I feel like it's a little bit too risky, so they probably won't do that. Just because I feel like Stranger Things in many ways is a crowd-pleasing show, so they're gonna bring back Hopper, and they're gonna have all the favorite characters in it again, and not try too much new, but maybe a little bit new. One thing that will be new and cool for sure, though, is Elle's lack of powers. I think the fact that she didn't have her powers back in the 3 months later scene, I think that that is a good indication that they're not going to come back automatically. Either something Upside Down related will have to happen, or something with Dr. Brenner. They could bring him back in that way, and also link that up to Elle getting her powers back. Or maybe she doesn't get them back. I mean, I'm pretty sure she will, but it might be interesting if she doesn't, you know? Ultimately, I don't think we should find out too much about what the Upside Down is, or what the Mind Flayer is. Like, I definitely want to learn more about the overall nature of it, but I feel like if they reveal exactly what it is, it'll make it a lot less interesting and scary. Alright, we are attempting to put trees on the houses. And things are making weird noises and freaking me out. Ugh, it's stuck. Ugh, it's not going in all the way. It's too hard. It just can't fit. Ugh. All I had to do was push. Yeah. Okay, are you guys ready for this? Okay, I haven't seen it from this side yet. Wow, that's okay. I like that a lot. That is very cool. And now you guys can see that side. So I am looking forward to the next season, which might be the last one. I sort of hope it is. But if they need to do 5, then okay. I say just Don't take it any more than that. It's a pretty well-known thing at this point that most good television shows that stay good the whole time don't have a ton of seasons. And a lot of television shows that do have a ton of seasons lose a lot of quality by the end. God damn it, guys. I hate my life. I just realized I did the wrong timer on my phone for the camera, so for a little while it wasn't recording, and that makes me irritated. But it's cool, you can flip it upside down and right side up, and Mike fell off again. He did the first time that I recorded that part, except I had placed him in the upside down for no reason. But yeah, it's a cool Lego set and stuff. Trying to get Mike to go back. Alright guys, thanks for watching my review video.